Those sort of intense periods where it feels like you're flying the plane as you're building the plane, it takes a different kind of marketer for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it takes a ballsy one. All right, we're here with Billboards, Bets, and a Bit of Booze. This is Jonathan Gudai, your host, and I'm very, very happy to have as a special guest Nehme Abouzeid, a Vegas marketing legend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I want to talk about marketing stuff because I know we're talking about a lot of cool kind of like parts of your career. But before we dive into that, I remember it was the fall of, I think, 2023, taking my wife on a date at the Venetian, and we cross over on Sands, and for the first time, no, maybe it was July, it was a summer, the first time the Sphere had been activated. I remember just like driving, all of a sudden, this basketball that was like the craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire life just emerged. It's like, that is what that these guys have been working on. Like it's been this black dome, all this potential, but that is unbelievable. So talk about that. How early were you in the Sphere project here? Which everyone I'm sure knows the Sphere now. It's worldwide famous, but that massive LED dome that's right behind the Venetian. How did you get involved and looped in with those guys?
Well, what's funny is after I left the Golden Knights in 2017, I launched my own consulting firm called Launch Vegas, and the whole point of it was for me to be like a fractional CMO for brands that were from out of market trying to launch on the Strip but didn't know how to do it. So that was really the narrow niche, and MSG was one of the first clients. And so they were like, hey, we got this project. It's not many people know about it, but we need some guidance on the business and marketing side, even though it was only halfway out of the ground at that time. But I had spent 9 years at Venetian, so I knew everyone there, and and I was their land partner. But essentially, I was a year as a consultant, and then in 22, they brought me back as a SVP of sales and marketing. And so you're right. When we lit it up on July 4th, that was kind of the first time. We were only doing test patterns before then, but it was the first time that anyone really had seen what the outside could do. And we lit it up. I was there. I was on a balcony across from it with MSG people, and it was like that big aha moment, right? So it was like a greatest hits type of show that did a little bit of a fireworks display, a little bit of a jack-o'-lantern, basketball, but it was like, I couldn't believe it because I was on a balcony at Howard Hughes Parkway. I was watching people just get out of their cars, run across the street to take selfies in the middle of traffic. And it was, the clarity was far better than you expected in terms of the clarity of the visuals. And it kind of told a story. So it was like almost like a sentient being of like Sphere. And like it had a personality, it was happy, it was sad. And we've all seen that since. But I used to think the marquees on the Strip were pretty, technologically advanced, but once Sphere got lit up, it put like all the hotel marquees to shame in a lot of ways. And even the fireworks display that the city was putting on at the time that was coinciding with Sphere, it looked like they were playing off each other and they weren't. And it really augmented what the city was doing. And it made every other type of board or message feel a little bit flat once you lit up Sphere. But it was pretty amazing. I mean, I think the two watershed moments were that July 4th, which you're talking about, and then, the first U2 concert on September 29th. Those were like the big.
I was there that weekend as well, and that was unbelievable.
I mean, look, there's a difference between being a corporate marketer where it's like, okay, it's Hilton. Like, here's the brand standards.
Right.
Here's basically the here's the palette, here's the tagline. There's a certain skill set, I think, in taking an entrepreneur's vision, whether they're a billionaire or not a billionaire or, a Silicon Valley 20-something, taking that vision, putting it into those Gen 1 brand documents, and then going to market with it. So like I said, the last 7 years has really, my focus has been on that kind of stuff because I think that's that's the most interesting, is like that first like unveil of a logo.
Sure.
Or, or do we do a focus group around like this tagline? And to me, that's just exciting, but also to realize like Golden Knights have become, a household name now. Sphere is becoming a household name. And it's certainly one of one worldwide. So
Yep.
I kind of gravitate towards those projects, and it's people are calling because of that. And I do think that, honestly, when you do it once and you start to get those reps, no matter those sort of intense periods where it feels like you're flying the plane as you're building the plane, it takes a different kind of marketer for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it takes a ballsy one, right? I mean, you have to be willing to you don't have data behind you, right, on what's going to work for the first ever hockey team in town here, or a project of the kind of grandeur of the Sphere. So some really interesting projects and some really big scale projects, but there certainly is the theme of the 0 to 1, where you're either launching something or you're having to kind of transform something that is partially baked, but then really bringing it to life. Talk a little bit about like what are some of like the things from a CMO perspective that you're prioritizing there, and how did that play out with those last few examples that you gave of the Sphere and some of the other projects?
Yeah, it's really, it's tough to map out, a launch budget and then stick to it, because so many dynamically things happen, right? You may launch ticket sales, right, which we did, at both Golden Knights, Sphere, and also with Bally's is customer acquisition. Like you may launch that and then you're getting data, and then you either you need to spend or you need to kind of slow down because of, you're hitting certain KPIs. But, with hospitality, it's interesting because you're talking about brand building versus acquisition. And there's always that fight now. Everybody wants everything measurable. And there's that fight on last click attribution where it's like, well, give all the credit to digital because that's where the product got acquired or that's where the sale got made. But a lot of the times they don't give the appreciation to kind of more these offline channels. I'm a big proponent of offline drives online, behavior. And so, offline exposure drives online search. And and we've seen that in my recent, projects that, you do a big budget TV ad on linear or you do something else and you see a festival sponsorship or something, and then you see that search volume. And you can track it. So I think that, it's always marketing is always very subjective. Even as much as it's become science over art, it's still very subjective. There's always, and the CMO is always a hot seat job. It's just by nature. And everybody's an expert in things. But I think it just helps when, in Vegas particular, this is not a consumer packaged good, right? It's not the Nike.com website.
Right.
This is a product you can only consume in Vegas, and you can only consume on site. And there's 40 plus million people who visit every year. So sometimes you ask yourself, is brand awareness of a venue to someone in Malaysia who will never come to Vegas, is that a good use of? Is it worthwhile? Is it a good use of spend? And then there's that other, census where it's like, you got to fish where the fish are. You hit them at the airport, right? They land, 19 million people are landing and arriving annually. And then you hit them with a billboard there because it's within their consideration time set to make a purchase decision. So we look at a lot of data, but the good news about Vegas as a destination, it's loved by all generations, even the young generation. It's the number 2 most cost-effective destination in America to get to. There's plenty of hotel rooms, there's plenty of product availability, and now that we have events flattening out the 52-week tourism calendar, it's really just a matter of price and availability. And brands generally have mental availability and physical availability. And as a CMO, it's my responsibility to determine, make sure it's sellable and purchasable across all physical points of channel or points of sale, and then mental, that availability, we got to be in your consideration set. And if we're not, we haven't done enough marketing.
Sure.
The way I look at resorts, casinos on the Strip is everyone has a box, and it's up to you to decide what to put in your box. Some people put theaters, some people put nightclubs, some people put big casino floors, some people put restaurants. It's really up to you, but the end game, it's like how much cash flow can you generate?
Right.
And Venetian was more of a real estate optimizer, whereas Wynn was more of like, we want to be the best hotelier in the world. And they kind of own and operate most things, whereas Venetian will gladly outsource, farm it out to like Wolfgang Puck and third parties. They both kind of get to a similar destination, but they do it different ways. So that's how I always viewed the casino resort industry. And it's just fun that back now there's a lot of more independent players now, whereas there was a period of consolidation. And now there's people taking risks, opening boutique hotels, buying stuff, rebranding. I just think that's better for the consumer, that there's more operators and there's more choice.
Yeah, that's what my father-in-law says. So Kenny Epstein's always, like I always say, oh, there's another hotel that's opening downtown or another hotel in town. He's like, that's great. More investment into the community, more innovation, we'll bring more people, and he doesn't see it that it's a zero-sum game. Exactly.
I mean, it's, again, and he's a legend in the industry as well, and the idea that these events, like these sports teams that are not sort of anchored to a hotel casino, right, to any one code. Those are citywide events that drive demand, right? And now the hoteliers can just benefit by adjusting rate, right, and pricing. So the city has this Adam Smith invisible hand of the economy at work, right? Because everybody, suppliers, provide different support for the Strip, and it's just amazing. I don't think there's any destination in the world that gets 42 million people to visit 4 dense miles of pavement.
Real estate. Yeah.
It's so concentrated.
Special. It's so unique. Yeah, I mean the captive audience thing, the fact that 19 million go through the airport and the rest are maybe driving in from California or Arizona. So when you were thinking about your channels, like you said, a lot of people land and they don't have plans, right? I don't know what percent. What is that percentage these days where people who are tourists come in?
It's high. Back in the day, the old travel agent used to book your trip 6 months out. That's long gone.
Right.
The by and large, the data says people are making their purchase decision when they're here. And even people driving in, a lot of them don't even have their hotel rooms yet, which
it's unbelievable.
It's kind of staggering.
It's a testament to how easy it is to still figure it out when you get here. But that, as a marketer, that's the opportunity where you're thinking about your channels, which we know that there's more channels, there's more fragmentation than ever before in terms of reaching audiences. How were you slicing and dicing when it came to selling tickets and driving awareness? Was there, did you end up finding a perfect balance, or were you still kind of tinkering?
Well, it depends. I think hockey, for example, was more about teaching the local market how to buy season tickets and how tickets are sold, but it was a very much an established sport.
Right.
Going to a hockey game was very established. It just wasn't established here, so it's different things, and then of course, like Singapore, a casino in Singapore, locals have to pay $100 to gain entry. Every market has their own regulations and rules and stuff. So it's really, you just become a sponge and you try to do your due diligence before you open of what's the optimal marketing and sales strategy for each particular project. So, of course, sports betting's crazy because every state, some states you can bet on your local college team, other states you can't. The rules on promotions, like free bets and risk-free bets, is just, oh my God, it was maddening. That 2.5 years for me was maddening.
Yeah. I would go so far as to say that it's maddening even just today, trying to keep up with all the trends with consumer content consumption and where their attention is. We're in an attention economy. But that attention is changing and shifting. And the TV ad you were saying that might have been effective for Wynn back in the day. People aren't watching linear television anymore, or the kind of audiences you might be trying to reach aren't doing it like that. So, how do you look at? So as we look kind of forward in the bets that you see in terms of just modern day marketing, What do you see winning? What do you see losing in terms of just the channels that historically people invested into versus kind of what you see now and in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, television is having a big reckoning, linear TV versus connected TV, and just the ability to buy everything programmatically so that there's no waste, is a huge edge for a marketer. But again, TV is still like the most effective mass market medium when you look at CPMs, and so you want to get in front of the widest audience possible. TV is still pretty effective. It's still tough to measure in a lot of ways, but I do think that.
Do you lump CTV with TV in terms of linear versus CTV as like one type of a thing, or are you thinking of those as different things because of the way that they're bought and sold?
I'm kind of I'm putting them together, right? Because obviously it's a lean back, right? It's a lean back thing for the most part. If it's a big TV and you're leaning back, you're watching it. Maybe you're watching a communal activity. But then again, you have tablet, one-to-one, viewing of CTV where it's like tablet driven. But
OTT,
but I do think that television is, the more measurable it gets, the better it is to try to compare it to other forms of media. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes, look, even some of these digital, like you look at display, some of these, sometimes I question, the impression data and things like that on display and how effective it truly is in driving consideration, right? So,
so that might be one of your like kind of pull back from bucket where like display, you find it harder and harder to justify based upon its.
Yeah, I mean the targeting. It just, as long as targeting continues to iterate and get better and things, but there's just sometimes you just got to sit back and take a common sense business approach too. It's like, hey, billboard in Times Square or billboard during the Super Bowl or something like that. That for me, actually, I remember when I was a journalist, is we used to have. Talk about, if you didn't break the story, then advance the story, right? With follow-up articles, right?
Yeah.
So if you have an ad that sort of breaks the story for someone's mind about a brand, as long as you use other forms of marketing to advance it and bring them down that funnel, then you gotta factor in how that message contributes to the ultimate purchase. You can't just say, we served them up an ad, they clicked on it, give them 100% of the credit, because those people may have been exposed to those ads during travel, during whatever. So linear TV viewing. So you really have to look at it holistically and integrated. Not everything is measured to the nth degree, and it just doesn't mean it's not effective. It just means that you got to use a practitioner's gut to some degree as well, and that's the art part of it.
Sure. Yeah. We say that all the time, that one of the superpowers of, historically at a home, we call it video IRL, just reaching people on touch points in real life, is the priming opportunities where you can really kind of get a message across where you're not interrupting them. And it may not be, like you said, clicked and measurable to the extent that you can with a search ad, but it is being seen. You're sitting in traffic on the 15 or you're in the doctor's waiting room and there's a TV showing you a video ad on, in the waiting room screen. You're going to be exposed to that. And then when it comes time to actually moving down the funnel and you're serving, whether it's a display ad, a social media ad, you're more likely to engage with that because you've already been primed to that. So that's what you were talking about with that journalism thing of like, there's those channels like TV and at a home that serve that purpose. And it's a really important purpose. And in the age of maybe data and measurement, maybe it's lost some of its, respect, value. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's, for Bally's, we managed a lot of sports and broadcast deals. And, we entered the RSN space, regional sports net, at a time where like people were cord cutting. So it's like, how do you value a partnership in the regional sports network where from one day it was Fox Sports Net, the next day was Bally Sports, and we were the Bally's.
Right.
So you say, oh, those are worth $9 billion, those networks. Like, what's it worth in present day as, viewers are declining, subscribers are
Right.
declining, and everyone's cord cutting.
Right.
So it's almost a depreciating asset in that sense. But does it have value? Yes, it has. It has tremendous value. The repetition of the logo, Bally Sports, Bally Sport, on a Colt polo shirt, on a Mike flag, on a dasher board in a hockey rink. So sponsorships to a large degree are tough to quantify and measure the brand value of a sponsorship. There's a leap of faith you take when you sponsor a sports team. But if you look at studies, like something like 74% of consumers are more inclined to buy a brand's product if they're affiliated with their favorite sports team, and that's from, sponsorship agency research.
Yeah.
And, so if that's why so many brands got in early on the Golden Knights, because, people like Derek Stevens at Circa got in early at Golden Knights because it elevates. When you have one of the four major U.S. sports brands, the NHL Shield behind you, like it elevates your brand. And, you could debate it a million ways to Sunday analytically, but sometimes you just got to take a leap of faith.
That's an interesting point, because we talk about that a lot, that sometimes marketers spend too much time putting out product-focused, sales-focused ads as opposed to content. And that content, like you said, could just be an affiliation with a sports team, or if it's like let's say a chocolate brand, it's like a recipe. Yep. That is where their logo is next to it, but they're bringing something that's of value, or they're creating an association with things.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to that whole the branding versus performance. And unfortunately, I feel like a lot of companies in the past, especially agencies, have separated out those into like siloed groups. And do you agree with the statement that you're seeing, or you believe that there's a convergence that's happening, or were you seeing that at all at the Sphere or elsewhere? Or is it still kind of two sides to the...
I think it's... I think organizations are better served having a CMO that has a remit that covers all touch points. So if it's public relations, organic media impressions, paid media impressions, it's just better served for an organization that it's under one person, like the buck stops here, they can make that decision, because an impression is an impression is an impression, right? It could be an article that on Google, discovery, it gets served up to you because of the algorithm, or it could be paid, or it could be whatever. It's really about brand touch points. Yeah. And so I think a lot of organizations vary by industry, of course, but they're missing the boat. If they have brand over here, they have acquisition over there, they have dual lines of reporting, I just feel as though they're a little short-sighted, right? And so that's where you have all those like tone deaf, this CEO, this brand did this and it's super tone deaf, right? Yeah. There's myriad examples in today's media, but I do think like I appreciate reporting structures where like the CMO is responsible for everything, and the buck stops with that person, because it could, like I said, there's so many touch points right now that you really have to be responsible for everything. Win had a very simple, when I was at Win, it was like, we want to be the best. Like we want to be affiliated with the best entities, the best influencers, the best creators, the best festivals, the best whatever it is.
DJs,
right?
everything. Yeah.
DJs. So they wanted to be number one in every category. And so basically the best thing about Win is like you could go down to, a bellman on the floor and you could kind of say, hey, does this feel on brand for Win, and show them something, whether it's a partnership or whatever.
Yeah.
And even someone like a bellman might be able to say, no, that doesn't feel like us.
Yeah.
Like that's the best thing about Win, I felt, when I was there, between 2013 and 2016 is actively marketing, because everybody from top down kind of knew what the brand identity was and the brand DNA, and they knew like, that doesn't feel like us, right? Brands that don't do it as well, they're like, yeah, that could be us, that might not be us. But the fact that like, especially in a hospitality brand, you're only as good as your last guest interaction. If that's a housekeeper, if that's, a bellman, if that's a front desk agent, or if that's like, a nightclub attendant, then, everyone has to be on the same page. Vegas does a great job. I think Vegas does a better job than most cities because it's
service first. Yeah. Service first. And that quality versus quantity, I feel like, unfortunately, as a society, I think we've kind of moved to more quantity. And it's a byproduct of the access to information, access to platforms, the communication flows. But you see that Wynn continues to, people are staying at the Wynn, staying at Encore even today when there's been new places that have opened, because of that emphasis on quality.
Yeah.
And I think in marketing too, the definition of what quality is, I think we're starting to kind of move closer back to the fundamentals, right? And its brand is important.
Yeah.
And it's a mixture of certain things. And we at Adomni are playing a part certainly in the real life aspect of it. But CTV is something that we're actually about to embark on as a complement to your video IRL stuff, so that you can expose people outside the home, and then eventually you can have that message delivered in a retargeted way inside the home, where people can take an action. And so I think we see things very similarly in that regard.
I'm very impressed with what Adomni's been doing. I think to take something that's been tough to measure and to bring a programmatic element to it, and then extending it to other forms of media so that everything aligns and you can measure that through line. I think that's amazing. I don't know that many companies doing it. And the fact that you have Vegas as a test bed, you can iterate and you can test and measure. And I think that gives you a leg up on a lot of those other measurement companies out there as well. So my only regret is not pouring more money into this, so.
No, it was great, over the years getting to know you, and certainly I feel like as we launch this next chapter for us, I'm going to be calling you for some tips, because Luba, our CMO, is here in the studio today, and I think that there's could be some ways that you can even help us influence what we're doing here at our company.
Great.
But look, this was great, and I'm very excited for your next chapter of the entrepreneurial vision.
Appreciate it.
The next, where you're going to kind of switch over to the other side in a way, and just go through the full ownership stake, which is really fun and exciting, and also open your doors to a whole new paradigm. And thank you for joining us today. It was great to see you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nehme.